Persevere. Nothing worthwhile is easy. No one of achievement has avoided failure, sometimes catastrophic failures. But they keep at it. They learn from mistakes. They don't quit. You know, when I first arrived on this campus, we had little money, fewer options. But it was here that I tried to find my place in this world. I knew I wanted to make a difference, but it was vague how, in fact, I'd go about it. But I wanted to do my part to shape a better world. So even as I worked after graduation in a few unfulfilling jobs here in New York, I will not list them all. Even as I went from motley apartment to motley apartment, I reached out and I started to write letters to community organizations all across the country. And one day, a small group of churches on the south side of Chicago answered, offering me work with people in neighborhoods hit hard by steel mills that were shutting down. And communities where jobs were dying away. The community had been plagued by gang violence, so once I arrived, one of the first things we tried to do was to mobilize a meeting with community leaders to deal with gangs. And I'd worked for weeks on this project. We invited the police, we made phone calls, we went to churches, we passed out flyers. The night of the meeting, we arranged rows and rows of chairs in anticipation of this crowd, and we waited, and we waited. And finally, a group of older folks walked into the hall, and they sat down, and this little old lady raised her hand and asked, "Is this where the bingo game is?" It was a disaster. Nobody showed up. My first big community meeting, nobody showed up. And later, the volunteers I worked with told me, that's it, we're quitting. They'd been doing this for 2 years even before I'd arrived. They had nothing to show for it. And I'll be honest, I felt pretty discouraged as well. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought about quitting. And as we were talking, I looked outside and I saw some young boys playing in a vacant lot across the street. They were just throwing rocks up at a boarded building. They had nothing better to do. Late at night, just throwing rocks. I said to the volunteers, before you quit, answer one question. What will happen to those boys if you quit? Who will fight for them if we don't? Who will give them a fair shot if we leave? One by one, the volunteers decided not to quit. We went back to those neighborhoods and we kept at it. We registered new voters, we set up after-school programs, we fought for new jobs, helped people live lives with some measure of dignity, and we sustained ourselves with those small victories. We didn't set the world on fire. Some of those communities are still very poor. There's still a lot of gangs out there. But I believe that it was those small victories that helped me win the bigger victories of my last 3.5 years as president.
Obviously, you knew somewhere inside yourself that you were destined to be famous, because I think it's really a marvelous thing, that visualization thing you did. Do y'all read about this or hear this? That you used to go up on Mulholland Drive and park
every night
and visualize seeing yourself as...
Yeah, I would visualize,
This is when you were broke and poor.
Right, having directors interested in me and people that I respected saying, I like your work or whatever that is, and I would visualize things coming to me that I wanted or whatever.
This was in like 1987, 85,
yeah.
And
I had nothing at that time, so it was like, but it just made me feel better. It made me, at that time, all it really was for me was kind of making me feel better. I would drive home and think, well, I do have these things. They're out there. I just don't have a hold of them yet, but they're out there.
Okay, so you would get this from what, self-help books or whatever?
Yeah, self-help section.
Self-help section.
They've renamed it the Jim Carrey wing.
So didn't you write yourself a check? I heard that you did. Is that true?
I wrote myself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, and I gave myself 5 years, or 3 years maybe, and I dated it Thanksgiving 1995. And I put it in my wallet, and I kept it there, and it deteriorated and stuff. But then just before Thanksgiving 1995, I found out that I was going to make $10 million on, I think it was Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber, yeah.
Yeah.
Why didn't you pay attention to your life? I said on the show, probably the producers tell me that they counted 33 times, but I know I thought it at least 1,000 times. I would say listening to your life as it whispers to you first, so that it does not have to knock you upside the head with a brick or come crashing down on you as a brick wall, is one of the greatest principles of life, because there are many things that happen in life that are beyond our control. Natural disasters, death, unexplained events. But there are also many, many, many things in life which we can control and become out of control because you're just not paying attention. You are sleepwalking through your life. And I have seen this so many times on the show. I wanted to take the guests and go, would you just pay attention? So this is what I've learned and how I've explained it to myself. Life whispers to you all the time. The whisper gets louder. If you don't get the whisper when it gets louder, it gets, I call it like a little pebble, like a little thump upside your head. When I was a kid, if I was doing something my grandmother didn't like, she'd just turn around and thump me. She wouldn't even look at me. She'd just give me a thump, and I'd know that's my cue to stop it, or we're gonna get worse. The whisper is the message. The pebble or the thump upside the head, usually it's gone into a problem. You don't pay attention to the problem becomes a brick upside your head. The brick upside your head is a crisis. You don't pay attention to the brick upside your head. The crisis turns into a disaster, and the whole house brick wall comes falling down.
We're having this conversation about when he plays in sports or when he does something about, do you go full out or do you not? And I see sometimes in him that when he's out on the field or doing something, he doesn't play full out, and he'll have an excuse. Like my leg hurts, or my arm hurts, or something happened, the coach was unfair, whatever, the referee was unfair. And what happens with people is we tend to go out into the world and we look for those sort of excuses about why things aren't the way we want them. And when you do that, you lose all your power in life. When you start focusing on the external, on the excuses, you lose your power. Here's the way people really think. I will tell you, I can go out on stage and bomb. You go out there and you just bomb, right? And people will respect you for going out there and trying your hardest. It's not how you actually perform that earns you the respect of your peers. It's the fact that you went out and actually did it.
Be strong and very courageous. Be strong and very courageous. Be strong and be of good courage. Be strong and possess the land. Because God knows that for what you're going to do, it is not by our strength. You understand? You understand. See, help me preach this thing this morning, girl. It's inner strength. So my fourth point is you got to have inner strength for this fight. It's not your outer strength. It's not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. So you got to have that gut strength, that belly strength, that devil define come hell or high water strength, that roll me out in front of them and I'll preach from a chair strength, that tenacity to take a licking and keep on ticking, that inner strength that when I can't do as I would, I'm going to do as I can, but I'm not going to stop doing to the best of my ability. I'm going to stretch and go, hallelujah, be strong. Strong.
Kaizen. The study of Kaizen is one step, one little piece at a time. That's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you win or run a 1,000-mile race? one step at a time. When Japan rebuilt after World War II, they had to adapt to Kaizen because everything was destroyed. They looked at everything gone. They couldn't imagine trying to rebuild Japan. But what did they do? They rebuilt it one brick at a time, one person at a time, one business at a time, and it turned into such a thriving country so fast because they adapted Kaizen. Break it up into small pieces. You got a goal? Take a bite today, this moment. When you're done watching us right now, go do something towards your goal. Go send an email, call somebody, say no, say yes, look for a new job, start the company, create the URL. If it's real estate, go make offers.